U.S. and many of its allies seem impatient to wait for the UN findings, with American warships already converging near the war-torn state, and the British are preparing to join them. RT's Maria Finoshina looks at where their confidence comes from in blaming the Syrian government for using chemical weapons and where it might lead.
United Nations experts are in Syria to investigate whether chemical weapons were used during the ongoing conflict. Finally. But even before they start, a senior U.S. administration official has said there is very little doubt that chemical weapons were used by the Syrian regime against civilians. These are the arguments we are told were given to President Obama as proof. The reported number of victims. But how can the number explain how? They say during World War II, up to 80 million people were killed. What does it tell us about how they died? The next argument the American administration says leaves them in little doubt that Assad attacked his own people with chemical weapons is the reported symptoms of those who were killed or injured. Symptoms, of course, speak for themselves, but how does that answer exactly who was behind this? U.S. intelligence cites witness accounts. That is hardly a reliable argument for Syria. Since the beginning of the conflict there, almost 2.5 years ago, each side has accused the other, often echoing each other. While covering events from different cities in Syria, those under governmental or rebel control, I often met and talked to witnesses from both sides whose accounts contradicted one another. The truth was never easy to find, even on the ground. Well, even if chemical weapons were used in Syria, why does it automatically point to the Syrian regime? Isn't that still to be investigated? It all appears to be based on assumptions.
We still believe that they don't have the capability to use chemical weapons. That has not changed. Again, we're looking into the facts on the ground, but there's no reason, if there's nothing to hide, for the regime not to let the investigative team.
Do you know if the UN team is operating under those same assumptions, that the opposition doesn't have the ability to use these kinds of weapons?
Yes.
They are?
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, major world media are bombarding audiences with grotesque pictures of dead people, including children, allegedly killed by chemical agents, allegedly used by the Syrian regime. And all that during a military escalation in the region. The Pentagon is moving its naval forces closer to Syria. 3 destroyers are already in the Mediterranean, readying for a variety of attacks, all of them carrying up to 300 cruise missiles. Moscow warns the West against repeating tragic mistakes. All this is reminiscent of events of 10 years ago in which, using false information that the Iraqis possessed weapons of mass destruction, the United States launched a reckless enterprise with consequences that everyone is well aware of. Russia's foreign minister spokesperson said. Well, this small tube Colin Powell, the U.S. Secretary of State at that time, presented to the UN Security Council as proof, led to disastrous consequences. Will history repeat itself? Maria Finoshina, RT, Moscow.
The Iraqi regime possesses biological and chemical weapons.
Today, we've released our unclassified assessment, detailing with high confidence that the Syrian regime carried out a chemical weapons attack.
States like these and their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil, arming to threaten the peace of the world.
This kind of attack threatens our national security interests by violating well-established international norms.
I do think that we have to act, because if we don't, we are effectively saying that even though we may condemn it and issue resolutions and so forth and so on, somebody who is not shamed by resolutions can continue to act with impunity.
This is a regime that has already used poison gas to murder thousands of its own citizens.
A government chose to deploy these deadly weapons on civilian populations,
leaving the bodies of mothers huddled over their dead children.
When those videos first broke and you saw images of over 400 children subjected to gas.
Obama's efforts to gain international support have not been as successful as President Bush, however. Only 9% of Americans surveyed by Reuters think President Obama should intervene in Syria's civil war. Today, military intervention is harder to sell because the public is not behind it. And maybe that's because they've heard the same story before. In Washington, I'm Perry Ann Boring, RT.
Now, your information comes from Intel, right?
Yeah.
You've got some
I
CIA people.
I have CIA, MI6, I have FBI, I have foreign government. I have one of my friends was the head of all of Latin America, the CIA. CIA is crooks in action. All CIA people. They're all professional liars. They're all professional liars.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know.
Okay, but let me ask you something. You know, Richard Hoagland says, like, the lie is different at every level.
Yeah, that's right.
So let me ask you, do these people have the information correct, or are they also misled?
To give you that idea, now this is on a physical plane. I sat in on a meeting when we were talking about population reduction in the United States.
Right.
And there was a dozen of us, and they were talking about using neutron bombs in the major cities and biological weapons and things.
Right.
And within the group, you know, we're all buddies, right? It's like the three of us are buddies right now at the minute. Well, what if I sent you outside and we're talking about getting rid of you? Now, what happened is, which brought my attention was, I sat with this meeting, and one of my close friends was a member of the Skull and Bones, which is pretty high up. I mean, they're incredible powerful. Anyway, half of the meeting left, and we were talking about getting rid of some of the guys that were just in the meeting.
Really?
It's just, the question is, who's going to be left on top? And it's like being in a den of rattlesnakes, black widows, and scorpions. And there was a dozen of us, and they were talking about using neutron bombs in the major cities and biological weapons and things.
Right.
And within the group, you know, we're all buddies, right? It's like the three of us are buddies right now at the minute. Well, what if I sent you outside and we're talking about getting rid of you? Now, what happened is, which brought my attention was, I sat with this meeting, and one of my close friends was a member of the Skull and Bones, which is pretty high up. I mean, they're incredible powerful. Anyway, half of the meeting left, and we were talking about getting rid of some of the guys that were just in the meeting.
Really?
It's just, the question is, who's going to be left on top? And it's like being in a den of rattlesnakes, black widows, and scorpions. They're all capable of killing each other. Who's going to win?
Blast out of the box, take a hot second just to recommend you recognize the blessing that you've been provided with. Scriptures in the text like the word was made flesh, hit you with the best of this life and take you higher than you ever been. Who takes away your sin once you realize who's the way, the truth, the life? Yup, the risen kid. I mean the risen son. He's not done doing his work on this earth. You and I are the extension of his hand. So heal the land, raise the dead, start a fire, breathe life, speak only the words that he said. Look how the truth gets everybody moving the way nobody else could do it. Cause he's bigger than hip-hop, he's bigger than music, he's bigger than the life that you think you're choosing. He's bigger than the world, bigger than the movement. Without him giving life, the whole planet is useless. You know his name. Come on, everybody, say the name. Come on, we could all say his name. Come on, everybody, say the name. You know it. This one's for the future, the next generation. Born in the present, but was formed in the ancient of days. Come on, lift them hands and give praise. Stop thinking about the moment, just release yourself to own it. Let the spirit of God take you home again, controlling everything you do. The what, the where, the when, the who. I never knew we could be free. So why stop living when the I is in me?
Jack, you were right about Curtis and Assad having a past connection.
Go on.
His squad was ambushed by Assad's people. His squad was ambushed by Assad's people. Assad's lieutenant forced the men from Curtis's patrol to beg for their lives, and then personally beheaded them both. Assad's lieutenant forced the men from Curtis's patrol to beg for their lives, and then personally beheaded them both.
They want out of the democracy business.
Who does?
State Department. Higher-ups.
Well, first of all, the Federal Reserve is an independent agency, and that means basically that there is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take.
They want out of the democracy business.
Who does?
State Department, higher-ups.
What do you mean, out of the democracy business?
State Department, higher-ups.
What do you mean, out of the democracy business? Take a look at Iraq. This isn't going to be Iraq. I would be the president.
Our analysis is that you lose, and Ihab Rashid wins. His party cracks down. Sectarian violence all over again.
So that was all true 2 days ago. What the hell has changed?
Well, with the plane crash and the arrest of Tariq, your brother's taken his entire senior command out of the picture. We thought we needed a coup to do that. With them gone, State Department feels that you can handle your brother.
No more need for a coup.
And Jamal wins an election that I would lose.
No, we're inclined to think he would fix the election, but we're okay with that. We could use a good, strong, secular leader who makes all the appropriate noises about democracy without any of the messiness.
No, no way. This has gone too far.
Actually, you've gone just far enough. It's perfect.
What is the proper relationship, what should be the proper relationship between a chairman of the Fed and a president of the United States?
Well, first of all, the Federal Reserve is an independent agency, and that means basically that there is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take.
The ECB is ready to do whatever it takes to preserve the euro. And believe me, it will be enough.
The world judged the Iraqi regime was a dangerous aggressor. In the interests of world peace and regional security, the community of nations required Iraq to surrender its offensive arsenal, its chemical and biological weapons, and abandon its nuclear weapons program. Iraq agreed to comply.
The world judged the Iraqi regime to be a dangerous aggressor. In the interests of world peace and regional security, the community of nations expelled Iraq from Kuwait, required Iraq to surrender its offensive arsenal, its chemical biological weapons, and to abandon its nuclear weapons program. Iraq agreed to comply. Iraq's continued defiance of the community of nations presents a challenge which must be addressed.
Presents a challenge which must be addressed. It is inherently dangerous
to allow a country such as
Iraq to retain weapons of mass destruction,
particularly in the light
of its past aggressive behaviour.
If the world community fails to disarm Iraq, we fear that other rogue states will be encouraged to believe that they too can have these weapons, these most deadly of weapons, to systematically defy international resolutions, and that the world will do nothing to stop them. That is the ultimate nightmare, which the world must take decisive and effective steps to prevent.
Possession of chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons by terrorists would constitute a direct, undeniable and lethal threat
including
to
Canada
Australia and its people.
The world has tried other means for years,
other means, but so far to no avail. We cannot walk away from the threat that Iraq's continued possession
of weapons of mass destruction
constitutes to its region and to the wider world. In the final analysis, Mr. Speaker, the absolute conviction of the government is that disarming Iraq is necessary for the long-term security of the world and is therefore manifestly in the national interest of Australia.
In the final analysis, disarming Iraq is necessary for the long-term security of the world, to the collective interests of our historic allies, and therefore manifestly, Mr. Speaker, it is in the national interest of this country.